Hi, my people, my sport club people. We're back. Thanks for being here at the top of the hour. We'll wait for people to trickle in, and we'll have some housekeeping things at the start. But welcome back, everybody, for our fourth rendition of the NIRSA Sport Clubs, Ideas in Motion. My name is Chad Zimmerman. I'm the Senior Assistant Director for Sport Clubs at the University of Texas at Austin. Joining me today, yet again, are our very good friend, Sarah Hawkins, Coordinator of Clubs and Organizations from Cal Poly, and Wendy Sheppard, Assistant Director for Sports and Risk Management from University of Richmond. They'll be helping lead today's discussion, but again, we encourage any and all to chime in. Sarah and Wendy, thanks for continuing to work with me on these. So moving along, I'm going to try to multitask here as best as I can. We'll be here for the next hour reviewing all information related to sport clubs. Some housekeeping info before we get rolling. This session is being recorded and will be posted on the NIRSA website along with the chat. So please utilize that feature to ask questions, post information, say hi to your friends. There is a private chat function if you really got to say something important to your friends. But again, share it with everyone as much as you can. Please ensure you're on mute as to not share background noise with 150 plus people. I'm going to mute myself as soon as I'm done talking, but we do invite you, unmute yourself at any time if you want to ask a question or you want to share information. Be aware also that this is an uncertain time, as we're all aware. I mean, I don't need to really educate you on that, but opinions and voices are valued, and we know that there's not very much certainty right now. So I'm sure some of the predictions that we'll make today may not come true, and we want everybody to be respectful of everyone's opinion and help in keeping this a safe space for all sport club related thoughts and ideas. So our learning outcomes for today, as you can see on the screen, we just want to review the latest information from our sport governing bodies. From our call last time, we were led by Sarah in reaching out to all of those NGBs and trying to collect information as they are able to share it. We are going to share information related to the return to activities for sport clubs around the country. And also prepare for a COVID-19 effective fall, because we know that's coming. So how can we utilize the best resources possible with industry experts? First, I did want to point out the NIRSA Connect Sport Clubs library. It is available for any NIRSA member, and you can join any community that you so choose. I advise or encourage everybody here to join the sport clubs community. We are beginning to reorganize some of the folders and content, because a lot of anything that gets posted in the community just generally goes into the sport clubs folder. So we're starting to populate some of our other folders and things like that. We encourage y'all to stay connected there, share your resources there too, because we will be posting all of the resources we share today in that library. So Sarah will take it from here and begin to review our survey of governing bodies.
Good morning, everyone. Like Chad said, I'm Sarah Hawkins, she, her, hers, and I'm the coordinator for clubs and orgs at Cal Poly and the advisor to our club sports program. And to kick us off this morning, I've shared a link in the chat window. If you're just now joining us, I'm going to post the link again. But if everyone wants to fill out this Google form for us and just share quickly where your school is at with what you're planning to do. Do you have decisions made for practices and information like that? It's just a really quick survey. You can do it now or you can do it later. But at the end of the survey, you'll get a link to view the results from everybody, which is a great way because we've set it up so we can filter by enrollment of your institution. We can filter by state or by NIRSA region. So I hope that can be a place that we can all share some information. So that link is in the chat, and if anyone has any questions about that, go ahead and let me know. Chad, you want to move to the next slide for me? Awesome. So at our last roundtable, I shared my idea for the National Governing Body Ambassadors Program, and I really want to thank everyone that got in touch with me and volunteered to reach out to the national governing bodies. We had a really good response, and the results are still coming in from all of you that are reaching out to those NGBs. So at this time, I've got a couple of links to share with you. The first one is going to be, if you're still interested in helping out, this form link that I just shared is the form to see which NGBs still don't have an ambassador. And so you can select as many as you're interested in, and then I'll assign one to you. So if you're still interested in helping out, or maybe you've already reached out to one and you're interested in taking on another one, please fill out that interest form, and I'll reach out to you with an NGB to contact. The next link I'm going to send to you, and I've shared this in NIRSA Connect already, but just so we have it here conveniently, give me just. But this link is going to lead you to the database of responses that we've gathered so far. As of this morning, we have national governments that have replied to our questions, and I want to thank again everyone that has reached out to them. It's been really helpful to see the information and see what results they have. So Chad just pulled up a list of the specific groups that we have heard from so far. So we've got a couple of teams where the fall season, Chad, sorry, can you go back to the PowerPoint? Perfect, awesome. So these are the sports that we have specifically heard from this morning. We have got back to us and said, we're not conducting any official events as a national governing body in the fall. So crew, lacrosse, and volleyball fall into that. We have several that have not made a decision yet. You can see those in the middle column there: bowling, cycling, equestrian, Quidditch, roller hockey, running, rugby, tennis, and ultimate. And then we have heard from a decent number of NGBs saying that they are planning to hold their fall seasons: archery, baseball, basketball through NCBBA, esports, ice hockey through ACHA, softball, spikeball, and triathlon were specifically those that have events scheduled or are allowing activities for the fall. But what we really saw in the survey responses from the national governing bodies is that if anyone's been to any of these previous roundtables, the thing we keep saying is we were waiting for information from the NGBs, right? We were waiting for the NCAA guidelines. We were waiting for the NGBs. Well, when we reached out to the NGBs, it turned out they're waiting for us. They were waiting for us to tell them what we were going to do, because if they would and give us that about our own schools yet either. So I think it's great that we have now established this two-way communication between us and the national governing bodies, and I'm excited to facilitate that. Chad, if you want to now jump back over to the spreadsheet, that the link I shared will take everyone to that. This will get automatically updated, so anytime we hear from an NGB and the ambassador fills out their responses, that will get updated. And I just want to mention some general themes that we covered that I read through all the responses from all of the NGBs. And here's kind of the gist of what they got. And in terms of dues or fees, there wasn't really any changes. Most dues, or most NGBs were saying that the dues were either going to remain the same, or they were going to wait and see and maybe make an adjustment afterwards if the season got shortened. So that was kind of the general theme we saw there. Another thing we asked them about were penalties. If a team can't participate, would they lose their status for the following year or anything like that? And for the most part, we're not seeing anything like that. Everyone was saying that, you know, if you don't participate, you obviously wouldn't qualify their rankings, but it's not going to jeopardize your participation in the future. So that was good to see. Another question that we had for them was about player eligibility. And there's great news here. A lot of our national governing bodies don't place limits on eligibility. As long as the student is enrolled, they are eligible. But we do have some of our NGBs, as we know, that have pretty strict eligibility clocks. And for the most part, every single one that has responded so far has offered an extension of eligibility to players in light of the COVID cancellations. So that was really good news. Another thing we asked them about were, do they have specific limitations in place or guidelines for how the practices and games could take place? And we have some NGBs that have provided really good resources on that. Specifically, USA Rugby and USA Triathlon are two that come to mind that have published return to play guidelines. And so I highly recommend checking out their websites for that. Those are easy to find. And there's links to them also in the survey responses. And then another question we had for the NGBs was, what about liability coverage? Let's say that the national governing body says, we're not going to host national championships this year, but if your team wants to just host a friendly or a little mini tournament or something like that, is that going to be covered under the NGB's liability insurance? One example was Quidditch. They said, yeah, as long as they were following, the normal Quidditch rules, then yes, they'd still be covered under the NGB's liability insurance plan. But that's not the case for all of them. So I recommend that everyone read through that, look at the sports that you have represented at your school, and read through the responses. If there's a sport missing that you're looking for information on, again, I encourage you to volunteer on that National Governing Body Ambassador sign-up form, because we really need your help. We can't do this all on our own. And just one person reaching out to one NGB shares the information with all the rest of us. And so I really appreciate, again, everyone that's willing to help with that.
Before we move into practices, actually, I know that we had a couple governing body contacts on today's call. We jump to the NIRSA Championship Series first. Matt, are you available?
Yes, sir. So I know that we had a lot of questions coming up specifically about what the NIRSA Championship Series is doing in a time like this, especially with so much information going out about the NGBs going across the country. And I wanted to talk specifically about club basketball as it relates to deadlines and things like that. I know that in the future, I will post in the future next Friday, we will be hosting a roundtable discussion to kind of go over how we're going to be handling a lot of the information that's going to be going out to all of our basketball teams, as well as our teams that may not be in our current roster of teams that actually participate. We've kind of gone through a long period of time for the last 2 weeks as a NIRSA Championship Series to actually go and have a summit for 4 days where we actually talked a lot about a lot of the initiatives that we accomplished and things that we didn't accomplish in 2019, 2020, and then what ties we have coming up for the 2021 series and what we can and cannot do. And I want to make sure that everyone understands that the headquarters and NIRSA Championship Series is we have our pulse on and kind of seeing what's going on with the other NGBs, just to see if we can provide opportunities. Obviously, club soccer and club basketball are the two predominant fixtures within the championship series that a lot of people have had a lot of questions about. And so hopefully on that date next Friday, we will be answering a lot of those questions. And it's really tough because I've also had to take into account that a lot of schools don't know what's going on with their budgets. A lot of schools don't know what's going on with their teams, if they're going to be coming back to campus. And that could change from state to state. Obviously, that might be something out here in California. We're not going to be able to participate, where Chad in Texas might have all of his teams back on campus. And so we did talk a lot about that at the summit, and providing opportunities for our students to participate, but also understanding that if we do provide those opportunities for students to participate, we do have to have some rules and regulations and policies to make sure that our volunteers are there putting on these events safely. And so that next Friday, I'll put this in the group chat right now. The link is there, so that way y'all can register. We're going to go kind of more in depth. I reached out to Sarah, Wendy, and Chad. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to talk about this. This has really kind of put itself together in the last 12 hours, just because of the feed on the Facebook pages and personal messages that I've been getting about what is NIRSA going to do with all this information. But we're just trying to provide an opportunity for our students to participate in those particular sports, and more information is going to be coming out next week. And as we kind of get through this period of time, I think that kind of hopefully that answers a lot of questions. And if y'all have questions, feel free to ask them, put them in the group chat. I'll be here the entire time to talk about those things.
Thank you, Matt. If there are any questions right now for the NIRSA Championship Series, we do have Matt or Val McCutcheon in the room as well. But also, I just wanted to give the opportunity, any other governing bodies that are here, I think I see USA Ultimate here, maybe US Quidditch. If y'all had anything to share as it relates to an update with your sport, I'll give you the time right now.
I mean, I can talk, Chad, about Ultimate. We're still. I don't know. There's much more to update than what Max has on the spreadsheet that you all just shared. I would say we just put out return to play guidelines as well. Hopefully that will filter its way to you all. Our competitive season because we run non-college as well is canceled through September 1st. And we are currently making fall decisions. For Ultimate itself, there's only sort of a couple small college events. So for us, we're really thinking about the spring predominantly for college. I would anticipate, I don't know if we'll cancel our mixed regional, which is our one fall event. But I think certainly we're starting to look forward towards the spring.
Thank you, Tom.
This is Mary with US Quidditch. We're going to be posting information on our website likely tomorrow that's going to go over essentially what we what we put out in the survey that's in the spreadsheet that was shared. So all of your member teams will have access to that same information essentially. I don't think we're holding anything back. Like, we're going to talk about the credit refund policy. We're going to talk about that we're not sure if the fall is going to happen yet, and we'll know in July if that's happening. Just because we've gotten so many questions from teams, not just from NIRSA, and we really want to make sure they know what's going on. I just want to comment too on Sarah's point earlier that NGBs were waiting on club sports, but club sports were waiting on NGBs. I'd love to know if there's anything that not just USQ, but just other NGBs can be doing to help facilitate a smoother process for figuring out everything that happens. I know I'm in biweekly meetings with a bunch of NGBs through Sports ETA, which used to be NASC. And I don't know if we all realize that we've been waiting on one another. And so I just, if there's anything that we can do, extra information that we can help provide y'all, or increase communication or anything. I know there's so much uncertainty about what's happening, but the more that we can talk together, I think is awesome.
Mary, that is great information. Thank you so much. I'll reach out to you offline about that, because it would be great. I think a lot of us have been reaching out to NGBs and we're not getting responses. Those of us who are trying to volunteer as ambassadors, because this is a new program and a new idea. So the more that NGBs can hear about what we're trying to do here, I think they'll be more receptive to providing information with us as a group. So thank you so much, Mary, and I'll definitely follow up with you. Any other NGBs here that would like to contribute before we move on to practice information?
Yeah, this is Nora here with Spikeball. Similar to what Mary just said, we're kind of waiting to follow the lead of the schools. Like, I know California schools aren't going back, and our stance is we don't want to have the students playing if the schools don't want us or don't want them playing. So we're kind of taking it off that at this point, already knowing that most schools aren't going back, or it's going to be a different format. And we have like 9 sectionals throughout the country, so we have like cross-state play. We know our fall is not going to be normal. We're hoping to have like smaller local tournaments or coordinate leagues with schools, but we don't see a competitive season happening on our end. But yeah, the more school information we have helps us. I think Thomas, like July, they're hoping to make decisions for ultimate stuff in the fall, and that's our goal as well. But yeah, we kind of let everyone know it's in the unknown.
Thank you, Nora. And the good thing with some of today's efforts is that we are doing the opposite of the previous research now, and in the sense of collecting information from as many NIRSA member schools as we can. So with both sides of those surveys that Sarah Hawkins is helping us run, hopefully we'll have some answers to share with everybody here in the next couple weeks. There was a question that came through. Sarah, you might be able to help with this. Can someone clarify the no events in the fall section of that table?
Yeah, I just responded to that. These were the responses from the national governing bodies specifically. So in this case, these were sports that said there may be schools that host tournaments or have regional level play, but as a national governing body, they weren't going to be supporting any events in the fall. Hopefully that provides some clarification.
Sweet. And then there was another helpful link posted by Max Swarthmore that we covered last time as well. The Chronicle of Higher Education is tracking schools' decisions. And so he posted that link. I think it's really beneficial for governing bodies and anybody else. But those are just related to classes more so than sport club specific. All right, so moving on. Wendy, let's lead our discussion for practices.
Hello again, everybody. Wendy Sheppard. I'm the Assistant Director of Sports and Risk Management at University of Richmond. I'm sure you guys are all having as much fun as I am trying to sort through what we will and will not allow this fall. We've been having a lot of discussions in the state level in Virginia that I wanted to share some of the things with you guys and hopefully help you make some of these decisions. Obviously, the biggest thing that we want to do is make sure that we are following our university guidelines as well as state guidelines. I love what we've already gotten, some great feedback from the NGBs today, and what we've gotten in some of the previous discussions that are really going to help not only us, but the sport club participants of those clubs. They've spelled out things really clearly. I was just looking at the USA Ultimate one, as well as for rugby that I've been using. I know our students really appreciate how clear cut some of those stage returns are. So if any of the other NGBs are on, those are the kinds of things that are really going to help our students to navigate some of these decisions, and will help us determine, if they're going to fall within our guidelines as well. Obviously, indoor, considerations are going to be different than outdoor considerations. We have obviously a lot more space there, and the lack of sharing, the same oxygen for long periods of time is going to make some of those decisions easier or harder depending on what spaces we all have available. I know on our campus, we just got told the good news that they might be taking all of our gymnasium space indoors to use as makeshift classrooms if necessary in the fall. So that is going to severely impact a lot of our club's abilities to exist in the fall. Making sure that you are, if you haven't already, to start thinking about contacting your off-campus partnerships. For us, for ice hockey, or talking to the people at the rink and seeing what kind of requirements that they're going to have in place, so that we can trickle down and make sure that everyone is being safe and following not just your guidelines, but we want to make sure we maintain good relationships with those off-campus facilities. And then we got to start thinking outside the box. I know our Frisbee clubs will practice on any flat open surface available to them on our campus. So maybe we can't, because we have so many different clubs that have to use spaces, maybe we can, we find ways to accommodate them in a little bit different ways this fall. But one of the suggestions that came out of one of our state colleges, George Mason, their sport club director was looking at reaching out to all their clubs and asking, them to help provide their own guidelines. My intention is to send the University of Richmond's guidelines to all the clubs and say, this is phase 1, this is phase 2, and so on. If your club is to exist, how would you do it in all of these different phases? That way, whatever they're agreeing to hopefully means that they're going to follow those guidelines and be more compliant with what our expectations are, and then make sure they understand that at any point we can go one way or the other. If we suddenly have a big uptick in cases, we might go from phase 3 to phase 2 again. And that's why, so I would encourage you, if you even consider something like that, that you make them do all of the phases that you have at your university, so it's easy for you to manage things as they change. and then have them help you think outside the box for what other spaces they could utilize if their main one is not an option. But I know at our campus, we are strongly pushing to find ways to have these clubs continue to be given opportunities to exist. You know, competitions, Sarah's going to talk about in a few minutes, you know, they're up in the air, but practices, these students are going to find ways to exist, and the safer, you know, opportunities that we can give them, but they do need clear expectations, and we do need to hold them accountable for those situations so that we can keep everyone as safe as possible. If anyone else has any other suggestions, something that's working well, or has any questions, this would be a great opportunity. I'd love to get some feedback from others.
Hey, Wendy, it's Max Swaffmore here. I wanted to, sorry, that was just a jab at Chad. Max Miller from Swaffmore College here. I agree that the USA Rugby put out 2 modules, one for coaches and athletes and one for administrators. I did the administrator one, and granted, it's very broadly geared because there are a lot of professional rugby clubs or revenue generating rugby clubs across the entire world, because it was put out by the World Rugby Organization. But it gives you a good idea of, as an administrator, the steps that need to be taken in order to safely have competition on your campus, or even if your club is going to be traveling, what precautions and what you should be making sure to review with your students and their coaches and whoever travels with the team, to ensure that the hotel they're staying at is taking the right precautions, that they're, like, if they do a walkthrough, what happens with that? How are they gonna travel? Are they gonna rent, like, instead of taking 2 12-passenger vans, are they gonna take 6 12-passenger vans because they need to spread out when they're in a contained area? So ideally, even if you maybe don't oversee rugby or don't have rugby, it's a good module just to sort of open your mind to what is being thought about by an NGB.
Agreed. I saw a question somebody posted, the all or nothing model. I know I'm sorry, I'm going to call you out. Michael Potter, if you're on the call, I know we talked about this with VCU, maybe doing something a little bit different. If you don't mind chatting in, are you here? Okay. I know that we were talking once again in our state meetings. I know that VCU was talking about making exceptions to clubs that are easier to maintain social distancing. You know, they're like equestrian, you know, one rider on one horse is going to be a completely different animal than, you know, doing rugby or soccer. So I know that I personally at Richmond, we're trying hard not to do an all or nothing, because I do think that different exceptions can be made for clubs. And I don't think it's fair to lump everyone into that. I see a couple other people posting the contact versus non-contact status. Definitely agree. That's why I really like some of these, you know, these directions from like NGBs that will help us to regulate how quickly we, that we look at, you know, moving up or changing what they're doing. But it is, I mean, honestly, we're all going to be dictated how we run our clubs based on what the university requirements are going to be. If they've been told they can't travel, travel's not happening. You know, if they're told that we can't allow for more than 10 people in a space, I think we can get creative and we can allow certain things to happen. I can honestly say a lot of my clubs are not going to care if they have to come every half hour, 10 people every half hour. And we can give them a practice time for them to play the sport that they love. The question is just going to be, once again, facility availability, and making sure that people are being compliant with the policies that we enforce.
Thank you so much, Wendy, for leading us through that conversation about practices. And we were starting to dive into competition and traveling there as well. So I'll go ahead and bring up our slide on home competitions. Thanks, Chad. So when we were talking about practices, we were looking more on the local level, like what is our facilities and what does the school say, and then so on. with deciding about competitions, it needs to be a little bit more of a top-down model instead. So first looking at the sports governing body guidelines and decisions, and that's what our earlier conversation was, and we're going to continue to get information from them. We've already linked to the USA Ultimate return to play. We mentioned rugbies and triathlons. So anytime those return to play documents are available, I'll be linking them in that NGB database that I shared earlier, so we can all stay up to date on that. But then once we know that, another reason, sorry, I wanted to mention that is because is the play going to be sanctioned if the national governing body doesn't allow it? Are they allowed to practice or have competitions? Then next you need to look at more local decisions and guidelines. So what are your state or what are your county requirements? For example, until last week, San Luis Obispo didn't allow non-essential travel. And so we couldn't host anyone if we were still in that situation because no hotels were accepting people. So looking at your area and what is allowed. And then going down another level, what are your university's decisions and guidelines in terms of what activities are allowed? Is travel allowed? There's been rumors, if any of my CSU people are out there today, I know Mike is here from Sonoma State. There's been rumors out there that travel is going to be banned until December 31st. And so what is that going to mean for us? If that means no travel, then no one's going to be able to come to us and have home competition. And then, like Wendy mentioned for practices, what is the availability of facilities? And are facilities being used as hospitals, like in my case, or are they even being allowed to be reserved right now? Mine are not. And I know a lot of you reached out to me after our last roundtable of my assessment of what was in. And one thing that I wasn't taking into account for at that time was indoor versus outdoor. So that's something that really does need to be considered as well. And then to lead us more through specifics about travel, I'll go ahead and turn it over to
Before I move along, actually, I saw some good chat in the chat. I want to see if anybody wanted to speak more on some things they've been posting. So some of the discussion has been around, trying to model our recreation approach to the athletic department at our schools. Nick Schleicher, you had mentioned that we'll have major pushback if there's D1 football, but not club hockey. And that could be said for probably many sports. But I don't know if you wanted to chat about that or if anybody else discussing this issue wanted to share their thoughts.
At Central Washington, I know a lot of our varsity athletics, with this not being D1, they're already struggling to try and find competition, especially because a lot of our schools compete in California, which may not really be happening currently. So they're trying to limit, what type of travel are we using, things like that. So if those guidelines are put in place, and it's something that sport clubs can mirror, that's what we're going to try and do. So if we have to get, a bus or something for our sport clubs to be able to travel to another school in the state, then that's what we're going to do, because our big concern is clubs disappearing completely after COVID. So we have 19 club sports right now. We don't want to lose any because of COVID. So if there's ways that we can help continue to at least let them practice or compete, that's what we want to do. So we've been working very closely with our athletic director to kind of create those guidelines.
Thank you for sharing that, Samantha. I'll say in my position, I met with our athletic directors at the beginning of summer, and we agreed that we weren't going to have a repeat of what happened when the guidelines first started coming into effect. Club sport travel all got canceled a week before NCAA sports got canceled, and there was major pushback there. And so we met and agreed that that is not how we'd handle the reintroduction of sport at Cal Poly, that club sports would have the same privileges as athletics. And then I found out today, or on Tuesday, from the assistant athletics director, that football's practicing again. So even though those fields are closed for reservations, we've got football out there practicing. So it's clear that those decisions we made earlier in the summer are not going to be honored, that athletics is going to do what they have permission to do, and then we are stuck in that category of not being able to serve.
I know at the University of Richmond, we're closed for outside any type of visitor coming onto campus until we hit phase 3 of our return policies, and we don't have dates. We actually are going into phase 1 on Monday, but that doesn't include our center yet because we're not ready for visitors. We have to get safety protocols in place in the rec center, but we don't know where we're going to be. So until for right now anyway, we can't even invite visiting teams onto our campus yet.
Yeah, we are currently in phase 2, getting ready to go into phase 3 in Washington in our county. And we're a 4-phase model. So we have a feeling we will be in phase 4 once we reopen at the start of September. But the university is planning on following guidelines for phase 3, even though we have moved on, which is where we are expecting a ton of pushback from the students. So if the state is saying that we're good to, continue play and things like this, but the university is preventing it, I think that's where our students are going to have the biggest pushback. Not necessarily athletics versus not, because I think it's going to be that other option that's going to be our biggest factor.
Thanks, everyone. I was just, thinking out loud here too with comparing ourselves to athletics. I mean, in many cases, athletics, or at least football, are revenue generating programs, or at least have a strong tie to the university's mission and development and fundraising. And so I think that may be part of the reason why they have different standards than what we might see in recreation. So again, I'm just thinking out loud, but I did see University of Texas already has multiple players testing positive for COVID after they've just returned to some weightlifting activities. So go Texas. Moving along to talk about travel. So yeah, we're covering this in a good, I guess, order as questions come in into the chat. So I'm glad that we are following this. So to talk about travel, I broke it up into 2 separate. What's happening right now and what's going to happen, or what we foresee, what we can predict will happen. Just polling generally, if anybody can speak to clubs that are active in the summer. Is there anybody out there dealing with clubs that are trying to be active right now?
I've had 2 situations where clubs have tried to gather. Unfortunately, at Cal Poly, we lost 2 athletes this quarter, one on May 9th and one on June 9th. And so that was a very difficult situation to handle, where the teams wanted to gather on the field to honor that person and just be in community together. And in one situation, we actually had to step in and ask them not to do that, because we knew they'd come together and hold hands. And so that was a very difficult thing and a sensitive situation that unfortunately we had to.
I do see that club fishing appears to be active on some campuses. For those of you that have that, are you allowing sponsored club fishing activity, or are those participants playing more so as individuals?
It's my understanding that club fishing is still hosting events, and they are soliciting students to attend those events. At Creighton University, we have suspended all club activity, including all travel and funds. So they registered, and we had to tell them that they are not able to attend, or they would go through the university disciplinary process if they did go.
Student conduct, always an asset for enforcing our policies and guidelines. Yeah, I mean, I had a conversation with our dance team today regarding the NDA summer camps. And I'm sure there are other colleges in this room that participate with the National Dance Alliance. The tough part about that is that their summer camp is tied to the rest of their competition or performance calendar. So whether or not they go and how they perform affects their standing going to their national championships event. And so that's just tough, because, I don't think anybody's trying to prohibit dance activities, right? But we're in this situation that we're in. And now, some clubs will have not just this past season or championship season affected, but also this upcoming one, and how we navigate those. I don't know if anybody has thoughts about other currently active sports. Well, moving into fall 2020 travel, we have similar considerations as we had to practicing competitions, right? We need to consider what our university is doing, what our region or state is doing. But we wanted to break it down because travel is really only going to be a university decision. Whether or not the governing body has allowed competition isn't really going to affect your ability to travel. At least I don't see it like that. Whether or not your state has allowed, or has opened certain guidelines, again, I don't think will directly affect a university's decision on travel, but will certainly have an impact on it. So, as you consider your university's definition of travel, I think we all have that defined either in a student activities handbook or something along those lines. I think it's important to try to be as open-minded as possible with what you can do. So how does your campus define it? Can you leave campus? How far can you go from campus? Are there other schools, universities, adult teams in the sport that are local that you could still participate with, depending on those competition and hosting and facilities guidelines? It's important to understand that definition. I know at University of Texas, travel is defined as 30 miles from campus. And so that could lend itself to play some local teams. Again, that depends on some other decisions too, but if it's just crossing the city, that could be an option. How many students dictate a trip? Is it 2? Is it a percentage of a student organization? Is it enough to compete or perform? Those are things to consider as well. And then just, having the, transparent conversation with your sport clubs of how can students participate in their sport without university support. It's likely to happen, right? It's not something I would advise for our University of Texas students, but if a triathlon is happening 20 minutes away, our triathlon club participants are likely going to take a look at that event and consider participating in it. Then you have to deal with, are they wearing university uniforms? Are they traveling in groups with other university students? I think it'll be obvious that we would not permit them to use university funds since many of us have that control. But still, a lot of these sport club athletes are paying their own way. Fundraising themselves, paying membership dues themselves. So if their sport lends itself to hosting triathlons, the easiest example I can think of, a triathlon event, then you're likely going to see some university students participating. Does anybody have any thoughts on some of the questions I posed or anything else related to travel?
Hey, Chad, this is James Alexander from Loyola Chicago. I know for us, we kind of control the money that goes in and out of all the clubs, whether it's dues and fundraising, as well as any money that's allotted to the club. And so for them to go out and spend any money to do anything, they would have to come through me to do that. And so since budgets are frozen and, no final decisions have been made for the fall, but we're looking at a hybrid on-campus situation. For any club to go out and compete and do anything, they would have to come through me to pay for it. And so for budgets are frozen, we're not going to allow them to go out and do that. If they choose to compete in uniform after we've told them they can't compete, I think that would probably rise to a student conduct kind of scenario. If they want to go out and pay their own way and compete on their own, that's one thing. But to represent the university would be something different after we've kind of told them to stand down. I think that's kind of where we would come on that. And, understanding our situation is not the same on every campus, especially with the way financials go. but I could see students paying their own way to avoid the travel situation and going out wanting to play. I think the challenge would be more than anything else is having them understand that they couldn't use the university uniform to represent the university.
I have a comment on that from the NGB side. So that's where it gets difficult for us because we host like our own competitive tour series. And if these college students play in that tour series under their own name, unaffiliated from the school, that's fine. But as soon as it's like designated a college event or it's something with the club, then it can't happen. And we want to support like what the schools want. But it just makes it very difficult too when kids are like, oh, I can just come play not as my school. And we don't want that either. So it's just a fine line between all of these regulations.
Well, and I think the challenge too is there's so many colleges and universities that are doing different things. There's no sort of consistency. I'm in Chicago, an hour north is Wisconsin. Wisconsin has completely different setup as far as their state standing with regards to COVID than the state of Illinois does. And so that becomes a massive difference in it across the board. And so that becomes a huge part of the challenge, I think, on both sides, where students see that, hey, this club that we normally compete against gets to go and travel and we can't do anything. That's not fair. Or from the national governing body side, wait a minute, we've got university clubs and we've got individuals. What are we going to do here?
I know at the University of Richmond, our students are going to be advised that not to leave campus in the fall. You know, we're looking at canceling our fall break so that we keep students on campus and through Thanksgiving. And then once they leave home, leave campus for that break, when they get back, we're going to still have a week or two of classes, but it's all going to be done remotely so that they don't come back to campus. So I agree. I echo what you guys were talking about with the possible conduct issue. Is if we're telling them they're not supposed to go anywhere, then and we find out that they do go places, then it would be a conduct violation. I know our campus is considering allowing students to apply to leave campus for travel events, but I'm honestly still waiting on some clarification on what kinds of travel they would consider appropriate in the fall. Right now it's going through our risk management department, not through our recreation department. So I'm waiting for clarification on that, but I don't see club sports being high on the list of necessary travel in the fall.
A couple of good questions that have come through the chat during this part of the discussion one was from Sean Dean related to students living on campus versus students living off campus, and whether it's sport club athletes will be restricted to just those on campus or to any student. I don't know if anybody has thoughts on that, or if Sean, you wanted to speak on that question more?
Yeah, here at TCNJ, we're Central New Jersey. We just entered phase 2 of our state reopening, but we're looking at a hybrid kind of fall semester where we're going to cater to freshmen and kind of students who are taking labs to live on campus. And we're looking at 1 bed per room, which kind of gives us capacity of the 2,500. So us being from the rec department, we're not sure if we can only cater to the students living on campus or if we can open up all of our programs. And this goes for sport clubs, intramurals, group fitness, to students that live at home or who live off campus in the surrounding area. So I kind of just threw it out there to get some thoughts going.
Well, similar to that as well, Matt Coots had asked, for those universities who are not allowing clubs to travel, are you allowing clubs who practice off campus to participate? Similar question. I don't know if Matt, you want to talk about that, or if anybody else has thoughts there.
Yeah, I was just curious to see if, since we are worried about travel and leaving campus and all that kind of stuff, is it fair for us to then say, the clubs that are on campus, you're allowed to practice, but the clubs that are off campus, our ice hockey club practices, a block off campus. We've got a rink really close. But as soon as you start letting them practice, they're off campus, like, does that then steamroll down to our equestrian club who may be 45 minutes off campus or whatever the case may be. So just trying to get some clarity on what other people are working on.
I know at Richmond, we have, that's one of my conversation I'm having with the rink to find out if they would follow our university policy when they were there. I know specifically our governor has dictated how horse shows and barns are allowing students to come back for equestrian. So those decisions are going to factor in to whether or not I would allow them to travel off campus. But once again, it ultimately comes down, I'm still waiting for clarification from our risk management department as to whether or not they see that as, essential travel or not.
Here at SIU Carbondale, we try not to monitor like off-campus practice spaces because ultimately sometimes those spaces are privately owned, and we leave it to those individual owners or perhaps even some type of national governing body to monitor those places. We do have equestrian here, and that you brought it up, did just think of that. And ultimately, I would communicate with them and ask what their advisor thinks, who also owns their stable. And if she's okay with it and it's in line with the national governing body, then I would say go for it. Because ultimately, I can't tell them no and also enforce it in an ethical manner. I feel like that I would be encroaching on the rights of students really off campus. And I try to stay out of things like that.
Thank you, Victor. I think that's an important point to make, actually. I mean, again, depending on what your university decision is, but what's to say that they won't go out to eat together, and that's not something that we can govern, right? So I know those are different things, but just an aspect to consider. Just out of brevity, wanted to move to one other chat question that came through from John Broska. Really good question, actually, something that I can speak to as I assist with an event like this, but I'm sure others could share their thoughts too. Does anyone have any ideas for how they may handle fall rec extravaganza or welcome back to campus events, which can't be held in your building, but provides clubs a chance to meet interested members? I know at the University of Texas, we host what we call Party on the Plaza, and it's a huge day. We have every student org is invited. We usually have over 400 student orgs out on the main strip of campus, tabling, promoting their activities, recruiting. We are looking at a hybrid event right now, trying to do an online virtual org fair while still providing some sort of in-person on-campus event so that we can continue to fundraise for our student emergency fund, and maybe conduct some other activities with social distancing guidelines in place. I know that the Zoom fair, that's what everybody's kind of using. It does require some, IT savvy to set up that many links and make sure that it's, a good looking web page and that every club has the same opportunity to recruit. But we looked at a couple others. V-Fairs was crazy expensive, but a really cool option. And I don't know if anybody else has any other, recruitment platforms that they've seen online.
At SIU, we're doing virtual NSOs and new student orientations. In addition to that, they asked each department to provide a video. So then they had virtual NSO fairs as well. And incoming students are able to view those videos, and they're able to contact either the new student orientation or contact their professional. I've received about 5 emails that way, so it's a little bit encouraging. Also, most of our larger fall events, which, that build school spirit and really introduce students into the university setting, have all been canceled as far as I know. And I believe that's going to be really difficult in terms of increasing interaction in sport clubs. At our building, what we're doing now is that we're going to dedicate a space of our building to where sport clubs can sit down and recruit students at all times. There's going to be a dedicated space for sport clubs to recruit. Hopefully that will be able to counter the loss of our first 6 weeks of welcome events. So hopefully that'll work for us.
We're doing a similar event in that this spring our graduate assistants created an orientation video that our orientation program will use all summer. just to kind of represent all the different areas of recreation, how to get involved, fun facts on each one. And then that will be posted to our new department website. So it'll be a marketing tool we can continue to use. But then directly for sport clubs, we're going to create 1-minute videos for each club that will be shared out throughout social media, and the teams can also send out, so that each club will have their own individual Zoom meeting of how to talk to students instead of trying to set up one big fair. We just found that didn't work too well when we tried it this spring. So a big marketing video for the whole department, then individual videos for each team as well.
Thank you all. Just so that we can wrap up and keep everybody's schedules together, I suggest that you read the chat on that last question, because there's some good sharing in there about different options available to us for recruitment events and welcome back to campus events. But for our last couple minutes, we just want to review resources that we reviewed last time and more resources that we reviewed today. Again, Sarah, Wendy, or myself, one of us three will get that posted to the NIRSA Connect Sport Club Library, so that you can reflect back on some of these different return to play guidelines and things. If you recall, last time we reviewed some of these, the ACHA guidelines, our NACA considerations for fall programming, and as Max Miller, Worthmore, pointed out, the Chronicle Higher Education. But moving forward, what do we cover today, Wendy?
Yeah, we just, hunt around to see what other options are available for us. The U.S. Olympic Planning Committee has set out some interesting policies, just some suggestions for return to training and event planning. Obviously, I know a lot of people are using athletics as a springboard to get their policies in place. So checking out the NCAA guidelines. I really appreciate, the different NGBs that chimed in with their suggested guidelines for return. And I had to give a shout out to the NATA. I'm an athletic trainer as well. So checking out the National Athletic Trainers Association resources, since a lot of times it's athletic trainers that are helping to enforce some of these rules when these students are back on their fields. So they have a good resource and statements on their COVID response, and echoing with what the NCAA is doing. So we'll put up those links as well, or you can Google them on your own, and then obviously we'll give a shout out with those survey results.
Hey, Chad. Hey, it's James at Loyola. Just want a quick plug. I started a chain in the club sports NIRSA online to see what people are doing regarding specific practice restrictions or changes, and thinking that could be a great place for people that have maybe different or unique sports to add what they're doing that maybe we don't have from NGBs yet, just as a thought to keep that conversation going as well.
Absolutely. We, as Sarah had pointed out throughout the presentation, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention this before we take off today. Please do fill out this survey. We'll post the link again. This is going to be a great opportunity for us to, sort regionally, sort by state, and sort by institution size and public versus private in terms of what your decisions are for practice and competitions and travel. And we're going to try to collect that over the next several weeks to review at our next opportunity with one of these ideas in motion.
And this will also be great feedback for our NGBs that are waiting to hear what our campuses are doing. If they're waiting for us, hopefully this will give them some feedback of what we're planning.
Sarah and Wendy, anything that we missed that we had on our agenda before we depart?
Of course not. We rocked it. But if anyone has more questions, feel free to reach out to any of the contacts at NIRSA or Chad, Wendy, or myself. And again, thank you to everyone helping out with the NGB Ambassador Program. I look forward to continuing to work with you all.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thank
Take
you.
care. See you in a couple weeks.